Hey, this is Casey Combest, and this is the High Note Podcast.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Hill.
And I'm Hank Berman.
And we have Casey from Jackson, the man with the plan when it comes to recording studios. I've actually been following Casey for a long time. When I actually set this whole place up, of course, what I do is I look at people in the surrounding areas, and Blue Sky Studios popped up. And I just looked at the web. I'm a web developer, so I looked at the website. I mean, you got it going on, man. And I just want to talk to you about, one, your story of how you got involved with sound engineering. Like, did you start at another company? Did you start at home? Or are you a musician, that kind of thing? But yeah, man, like if you want to just kind of dive into it and let us know how you got involved with everything.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for having me on today, and thanks for the kind words. I really appreciate that. We certainly do spend a lot of time on the website and social media and those sort of things, but as you guys probably know, a lot of times it feels like no one sees it but your parents, and so it's good to hear that other people are noticing it. But yeah, man, I grew up down on the coast in Van Cleve, so not far from where you guys are recording right now. I grew up there the first 18 years of my life and came to Mississippi College in Clinton, right outside of Jackson.
I know that school well.
Yeah, it's a good spot. My wife and I both went there and had a great experience there, and just saw a lot more opportunities at the time for me to stick around up here. I was leading worship at churches and that sort of thing. And as far as how I got into the recording, I kind of had a lot of bad experiences recording growing up. So a lot of people will say I had this wonderful experience, and that's what led me to where I am today. Mine was kind of opposite. I did not have great experiences. And so I always knew there had to be a different way to create an experience that was meaningful for someone, but also an end product that they could really enjoy and their fans could too. And so that's why we started Blue Sky Studios about 12 years ago.
Where are you located in Jackson?
So about a mile from St. Dominic. So we actually butt up against LaFleur's Bluff State Park, which is a very unknown state park here right in downtown Jackson. It's funny, my wife and I, we lived here for the first 5 years of having the studio. We moved out about 6 years ago and just turned the whole place into a studio. But when we lived here, it was funny. She grew up in the country as well, and I grew up in Van Cleve, which is the country. And we were right here in downtown Jackson, but it felt like we were in the country because we're looking over several hundred acres of woods, and we could hear crickets and frogs, and it was neat. Country in the city.
That's pretty amazing with Jackson, Mississippi, especially downtown, because it's known for being an urban place, and it's, I mean, it's. I lived in Jackson for 10 years, so
awesome.
I lived in Clinton, and I know exactly what you're talking about. You talked about not having the best of experiences down on the coast in recording studios, and I probably know who you're talking about, and they'll remain nameless. But there wasn't ever really that many studios down here. I mean, to pick from, and I know the guys, some of the guys that had them, very few, but had them, and they did their best, but it wasn't what it could have been.
Sure, and it certainly wasn't. And it was more from Mobile to Jackson. All those experiences weren't. At the time, it was when I began recording, it was sort of this turn of like the home studio, the digital age, that kind of thing. And so it certainly is not a knock against anybody. They were doing great. And we worked with a lot of people where they were really nice, but maybe the style of music we were wanting to do was a little bit different than what they wanted to do. So yeah, definitely didn't mean that as a knock.
No, of course not. Of course not. No. We're talking technological ways and that kind of thing. I get it. It's funny because my wife and I spent all day yesterday cleaning out a couple storage places that we have to move to a new one, and some of the stuff hadn't been touched in the very back in 20 years, and I'm like the Fred Sanford of musicians down here. I hoard and I have all this junk, and it's terrible. But I bring that up because I found all kinds of stuff that is archaic now in terms of recording or in terms of play. I mean, all these heavy cabinets and outboard gear that I had, they're still in the rack mounts and stuff. And it was like, oh my gosh, this stuff, it may be worth something to somebody, as a collector's thing or something, or maybe some of it's still good, some Mesa Boogie preamp, guitar stuff and all that. But it was like, I forgot all about it. And just how the change in technology has come so far. I even had an event, Easy Bus mixer the one of the first USB mixers and that kind of thing. I mean, still in the box, never been used. So that's crazy. So I totally get what you're saying, and how. Tell us more about your studio and what you have in it. What are you running your the software and recording stuff?
Yeah, so we run Logic Pro. We also do Pro Tools from time to time, and that was how I got started, was doing Pro Tools. But I feel like as a producer, which is probably my favorite role in the studio, I work a little better in Logic. It feels a little more an extension of creativity, where Pro Tools sometimes can be a little more counter of the production side. But yeah, we have about 2,100 square feet, a Studio A, which is where we do most of our recordings with bands. We have a solid state Logic console that we got earlier, 2022. So it's about a year old to us, 16 channels. We have a ton of great outboard gear.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah, that's sort of the studio downstairs. Right now, we're recording this in Studio B, which is where we do video casts and podcasts and things like that. And then upstairs, we have another studio that's smaller for vocal overdubs, and then another office where a business partner for a different business offices upstairs.
Cool. So you do mastering as well, and that sort of thing.
We work all the way to mixing, and so at mastering, we typically have some partnerships. Like, we've worked with a few guys over the years. Right now, we're working with Matthew Garber out of North Carolina for the record mastering. He's really, really great. We've really built a strong relationship with him.
Okay, so you have all the bases covered. If somebody comes to you and wants to record, you can take them through the recording mixing process, and then you can get Matthew in to the
that's right. Yeah, to kind of finish up. Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Yeah. And when I sort of going back to my story, like, I worked at a lot of studios where they were talented engineers, but when I would say, hey, what should we do with this section of the song? Or, hey, is it too low or too high? They weren't inherently musicians, so it was kind of harder for them to navigate that. They were more engineers at heart. And we sort of take a different approach here, where we think there's a lot of studios that do a wonderful job of engineering. At Blue Sky Studios, we want to help produce your record. And, for some people, that looks like engineering, but sort of having the end approach in mind with, hey, sonically, where you want to fit. But then for some people, it is a little more in depth, like, hey, let's rewrite the second verse, or, hey, let's cut these bars right here so this section flows better, that sort of thing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I watch what is it? It's the video series that y'all Behind the Track. I love how y'all. I'm serious. I've been watching probably a couple months now. When did you launch that Behind the Track?
Yeah, we might have started a year and a half ago, but the last couple months we've become more serious about, like, hey, people actually watch this. We should keep doing these, and so and they're a lot of fun too, because we worked with tons of talented artists that no one's heard of. They're not played on mainstream radio, they're not on TV, that kind of thing, and so it's a cool opportunity for people to get to hear folks who are in the Southeast, outside of Nashville, New York, or LA, and doing really cool music.
Now, have you? What are some of? I know that there was a Venture Church cut a record there. Blake Houston, who kind of introduced me. Like, I was watching you, and then he was like, "Oh, we're cutting a record." And Jackson, I was like, "It's not a Blue Skies, is it?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Wow, I've been watching him." He goes, "I know Casey." And so, I mean, I know that's who you recorded. Like, I've seen recently, like probably in the past couple of years. But is there anybody else that you think that you've recorded lately that is on the train of big success, or is it more of just passion, writing songs, putting them out there, hopefully it hit on? I didn't know if you had any.
That's like asking me, I have 4 children, and that's like asking me which one is my favorite child, Jesse. Like, you're going to put me on the spot here.
That's well said. Well said, Casey.
They're all my favorites. Just kidding. No, man, there are so many talented artists. It seems like we work with, first of all, really nice people. That's awesome. Like, I don't know a lot of studios that can always say their clients are nice. Like, most everyone who comes through here, band or artist, they're genuinely fun to hang out with, so that makes it a blast. But a lot of the people we work with, they're not really trying to make a push to be full-time. Like, their goal is, hey, I've written these songs, and I would just like to share them with other people. They've spent time to articulate what someone else is feeling or what they felt in a moment, and they know that this song can either help somebody enjoy this part of their life, or kind of grieve a breakup or something like
Sure.
that. But man, tons of talented people coming through here. Zach Tolleson is an artist that we're working with right now that we're really excited about. He won Mississippi Songwriter of the Year and just is doing a lot of really cool stuff. Another guy that we work with a lot, Ance Rigby, he's a nurse practitioner at UMMC downtown. But man, writes some incredible songs, and then we work with some great churches. Like we've worked with Venture Church over the years, and Blake, and we just finished a big project for a writing church out of Starkville called New Horizons Worship, and they write at their church a ton of songs and pump them out, and so yeah, a lot of really talented folks.
What genre of music? You mentioned the two guys at the top. What genre of music do they do? What style?
Yeah, I would probably call it singer-songwriter Americana, like somewhere in that vein, which I feel like for us, like we're real comfortable there producing, engineering, modern country, and then worship. Like I feel like between those genres, that's kind of where we live. We don't do a ton of jazz or rap. Classical music. There's a lot of studios who do that better than us, and then we work on the occasional pop project that's always fun too.
So, do you have musicians that are working around town, playing the clubs and all that, come in to record with you or for you?
Yeah, it's funny. Somebody was asking me this the other day. Our studio musicians are insanely talented. A lot of them have spent time in Nashville, New York, or LA, or touring, but for whatever reason, and honestly, COVID was sort of the catalyst for some of them coming back to Mississippi because they were in those big cities and they didn't have work, and so being able to come back here, not only be with their family, but have a much better standard of living for a lot less has been a big
absolutely.
win. So, man,
but they were ready to get out of Jackson to go to Nashville, and now they're ready to get out of Nashville and come back home. So I get it.
That's right.
I played through the 80s, well, all of the 80s and early 90s in Jackson. So I knew a lot of those guys that left. James Stroud had a studio up there, Grammy Award-winning producer, and worked at Malico in Jackson and those places. So a lot of those musicians, when I left the coast and went up to Jackson at the beginning, I was amazed at how many really good musicians there are in Jackson, and probably still are. I'm sure there is. I mean, it's just a lot of good stuff, and yeah, I'm happy for you that you're making that work for them as well. So that's great.
Yeah. And the coast too. You guys have tons of talented folks.
Yeah, more and more every
sure.
day, it seems. So yeah.
Question: do you miss the coast?
Oh, absolutely, man.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm gonna say, being a Van Cleve guy, it's
Van
really
Cleve, that's God's country.
I'm telling you, but also like it's a drive away from the beach and stuff. But I mean, I know when I travel, and I'm gone for 3 or 4 days, I'm like, man, I miss that salt water.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
That's right, man. Yeah, my dad, he lives in Moss Point. My mom still lives in Van Cleve, so I get down there a few times a year to see them. Still have some great friends down on the coast, but yeah, absolutely, man.
Awesome.
Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we just had our first child, and we were pregnant with our second. I was talking to my wife. I was like, hey, what if we just, blue sky thinking, like, let's just, where would we want to move? And the coast was certainly high on my list.
Sure.
And the more we talked about it, she really enjoyed her community up here, and just wasn't in the cards for right now. But man, I'd love to be back down there one day. It's a neat place for sure. Well, I mean, where else in the world can you have beachfront property for under $1 million? Like nowhere. Like it's crazy.
That's right.
That's true.
Your dollar goes a lot further in this state than most states. That's why we're having an influx of people.
Yeah.
It's
That's
happening. Right. Now, with you starting a professional recording studio, with the home studios that popped up, does that affect your business plan or your business model? Because honestly, like anybody can set up a home studio, but I know y'all offer like almost like guiding them through the process of recording versus them having to figure it out. But also the quality that comes out of your studio is very professional. It would take several years for somebody at home to actually get that sound. So I'm really I'm the type, like, if I want to put something out pretty serious, if I can't do it myself, I would be heading up to, somewhere like y'all. Do y'all have that to where, has that affected, because I know it was pretty much, I guess, emerging. Is it still emerging, or is it kind of a?
I think it's here.
With technology, I think it's always emerging. I mean, you can have a home studio, but there's always, it's like the old saying, musically speaking anyway, that, you buy a piece of equipment or you buy some software or plugins, whatever. And in 2 months it's obsolete. They come up the version 2, version
True.
6, version 10, whatever. It's always something growing. So, and I'm sure being that is your business and what you do, you're on top of the game and all that. I'm sure you're well aware of all of that. But I think one of the other things too about a studio versus a home studio is most people it's a bedroom they've turned into their home studio or whatever, an extra room. But the freedom of space, like in your place, I think that right there is above and beyond. You're not afraid to belt it out, or you're not afraid to hit that lick or whatever. It's like, oh, the neighbors might not, or whatever. It's still in the back of your head. But a studio, there's that ambiance and that presence. There's nothing like it, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think that's nail on the head for sure. And I mean, what I started was a home studio. Like, it was in my bedroom, several different bedrooms over the years, and that was kind of how I cut my teeth learning. And so I certainly have a special place in my heart for people who do that. And we work with a lot of people that they want a good place to record drums, and so they'll come
Right.
to us and bring the tracks back to theirs, or a
Right.
great place to cut vocals. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the old. I don't know if this is the old adage, but I mean, you could buy all the stuff to do an appendectomy on yourself, but you probably shouldn't. It's like,
I like that.
Well
it's like
said.
there's a reason a doctor goes to school to learn how to do that. And so, the same thing with recording. Like, you
Yeah.
can buy the nicest equipment you want, but it really, in the hands of a good technician, is where it really matters. And I think the big win for hiring a professional studio is it lets you be the artist.
Yeah.
If you're engineering,
Yes.
if you're trying to produce, like, it's really hard to perform,
It's a lot of
because
different
I've done
hats.
it. It's difficult to wear all those hats. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that's hurt our business. Like, I think if anything, it shows people like, hey, we really want to serve you and be a part of what you're making and help make that better.
Sure. Or the showing the depth of what you can do as well. I mean, that, hey, no worries. We got this. We got you taken care of. We can handle this. I like the adage that you said is, I hear a song coming on called Rusty Knives. That would be a good one for pertaining to that. That's good though. I like that. So did you go to a formal education for this, or is this all on the job training kind of thing that you did?
Yeah, man, I wish. I think at the time when I graduated in 2002, which currently Delta State has a great program for recording. Southern Miss has a great program there. I'm sure there's others that I don't know about. But at the time, I think Southern had just started or were just starting their program. And honestly, I didn't really think I wanted to do anything in recording. And so when I was in college, I got my first USB interface. I mean, at the time, it was like, this is incredible. Now, if I heard it, I'm like, this is a joke. Like, this is a toy. You could probably do things better on your iPhone now than that interface that cost quite a bit.
Probably.
But no, I just learned. Yeah. Just learn things the hard way, which thankfully today, if you want to learn about recording, as much as school would be beneficial, like, you could go to YouTube and find out how to record an acoustic guitar. For me, I had to try 17 different mic positions the wrong way, the wrong mic, the wrong compressor, the wrong
That is,
EQ.
I think, one of the toughest things to record is a clean, balanced acoustic guitar. I mean, then you listen to people like James Taylor, or these
So,
main guys that have been doing it for years, and it's like, how do you get that? I understand the type of microphone and all that stuff, but that sound, that crystal clear. So obviously, when you said 17 different ways of not doing it right, but if it took 17 or 100, at least you found it. You've got it. You know how to do it.
That's right.
You can't take that away from you or your studio. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty cool.
See, I wish I would have had that formal education as a backbone to operate and be creative. It certainly would have made those first few years a little easier.
Yeah.
But I mean, you probably have your own style, your own speed now. Like, that's part of the Blue Sky touch, I guess you could say. It's because, I mean, whatever you've done before, what you're bringing to the table, it's a little bit different than anybody else. And so your story actually helps mold the sound. And I mean, I'm very impressed. And I'm just glad that we have. I always told my wife this. I said, if I hit the lottery, I'm going to build a state-of-the-art recording studio on the Gulf Coast. Make sure that the top engineers come down here to work it, so the talent would stop leaving our state and go into Nashville or LA or New York City. It always kind of baffled me. I always thought, like, some of the best music, some of the best food, definitely, but some of the best music is down here. in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah.
I mean, the birth of the blues,
Absolutely.
the whole state is just a encyclopedia of culture and music, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, that's safe to say. I agree with that. I think we get, and you probably know this from having grown up down here, that I think we get a lot of tourists, a lot of out of towners, out of staters that come around, and they don't realize the many facets of Mississippi. That you go up to the Delta, the blues. I mean, down here, not as much. We still have it, but the founders of the blues before they went to some that went to Chicago and that kind of thing. It's separate. So I've seen a lot of disappointment through the years. Not so much as lately because we have Ground Zero here now and that kind of thing, which we talk about all the time. But
do y'all have a Ground Zero up there in Jackson? Is that where it's at?
It's in Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Yeah, it's
okay.
across the street from the Delta Blues Museum up there. But anyway, I was just kind of getting on a tangent. But it's a different thing. But we're catching up with it. But I know Jackson, man, used to be Farish Street, and some of those after hours, all the musicians would head down to not the nicest part of Jackson, but it was like music was king and was alive. Do they still have that kind of scene happening up there, or is it you have to come in a tank or bulletproof vest?
Well, Fair Street, you definitely would want some type of armored vehicle for sure.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, there's certainly some great efforts and pockets of the metro area where folks are creating original venues and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure. It's still alive and well here.
Yeah. Yeah, Jackson. There was I can't think of the names of there's two that come to mind. That one on North State and the other one in Fair Street. That it was just the low ceiling, smoky, just that typical stereotypical
right.
blues scene. It's like, what do you want to drink? The waiter comes like, what do you want, pal? But it was good music. A lot of good musicians.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of old, like you're talking about the history
Mm-hmm.
in Jackson. Back in the 1920s, there was I can't remember some guy that. He's famous in music circles. Owned a hardware store and had a recording thing in the back, and he'd take these blues guys, kind of like what Alan Lomax did with his tape recorder up in the Delta, and made these records that are, if you can find them, you've got some collector's items there. I mean, but it was happening,
Mm-hmm.
and these poor guys, they just wanted to make a record. They didn't know their songs.
I do have a question for you, Casey. I want you to think about this. I've always been a proponent for digital because it's just a lot cheaper, but I want your take because I know the equipment that you have there. I've looked at your list. It's amazing. Analog versus digital plugins. Like, have you gotten to the point where, because analog's just expensive. It's heavy, it's expensive, it takes space. And digital, like we use Universal Audio, so we invest in their plugins and things like that. Do you still like that analog warmness, I guess you can say?
I do, yeah. The analog front end, I feel like going into your recorder, there's something really special about it. Not only does it just have that vibe that your ears sort of used to, and I think people wouldn't say like, oh, I love the way those highs sit. Like, a non-musician, a non-audiophile, they're not going to know that, but they hear quality, hear warmth. And so I think it's just pleasing when it hits your ear, that analog front end, but it's also when you start pulling on it with a nice parametric EQ or a nice analog EQ, like it bends a little differently than the digital version of that. Now, that being said, at times we have been all out of the box mixing, but now it's just a hybrid of whatever works for that project. So, budget wise, like it's going to cost twice as much for someone if we mixed everything out of the box, because not only do we have to patch every EQ in, but we have to recall that if we want to do a different song. And so right now we've sort of got a cool hybrid setup. I really haven't talked about it with anybody, so I'm kind of talking this out loud for the first time. But
bring it on.
We use when we're mixing, we do use the Universal Audio stuff. It's great. We use some Slate Digital. What else do we use a lot of? There's a ton of plugins. We probably have too many. It's kind of ridiculous to keep up with. But then when we get toward the bus section of our mixing, where we're running the final drums that have the software processing, we're running that through analog, and we're running that final mix through back through the SSL or some other piece of equipment to kind of sweeten up the audio a little bit more. And I did a test about a month ago. Like I was like, well, maybe this these plugins have just gotten so good where I couldn't tell a difference, and I kind of turned everything off. Did the same thing with software, and it was night and day. Like you just that analog compression, it's just there's something special about finishing your mix on that and the way that it hits the SSLG bus. It's just, I don't know, it's a cool sound. I'm getting in the weeds a little bit, but the answer is you can do a lot with software, but we still like the analog front end and finishing it with analog.
That's always been the debate. Exactly what you're saying. When digital came in, the very first record that was recorded as far as popular music or pop rock was Ry Cooder did an album called "Bop Till You Drop," which is a great record. And it was, all the musicians of the day were going, no, this digital stuff, no, there's nothing like analog. And like you said, that is true. That also goes to the thing of your home studio and your extra room, your bedroom. You don't have the room to have the racks. Or maybe the finances to have the racks of the analog stuff. It's like you're trying to consolidate as much as you can and get the best with what you can get in that little space, relatively speaking, little space. But yeah, there to this day that stuff. Analog.
And there's a flip side to that. So anybody listening right now that maybe you have a home studio, just be cautious with software. Every piece of hardware I've ever bought has held its value or gained value. But software, it's absolutely not true. That software that I've bought is worth nothing, if I can't resell it. Thankfully, there are some companies that sort of work with you on that, but it's not anything like what you paid.
The analog stuff is tangible. You have it in your hand.
That's
you
right.
Own it. You can knock it. You can touch it. You can say, I own this piece, whereas the other one is like crypto. It's like, well, I have it, I guess, but I don't really have it. So, yeah, I see where you're at, and I agree with that.
You have a manly Vox box, don't you?
The Massive Passive. So it's their EQ,
the analog.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Wow.
So when I went to his website back then, I remember looking at some of the gear because I'm trying to get inspired. I'm trying to look at what people have. And I saw his list, and it was like a lot of the analog equipment of the plugins that I look at.
Right.
And of course, you always want that analog, but you have to, it's a big investment.
Yes, it is.
And so even like with your studio, like you're not just a place to go record music. Like you've invested in the stuff that's going to take years.
A professional studio versus your own personal studio. It's night and day.
That's right.
Yeah.
We want that for the people of Mississippi. I want people here to be able to say, like, hey, I have a place in my state. I don't have to fly to go record at a nice studio. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully as Blue Sky continues to grow, I feel like what's really fun is we get to work with people over and over again on projects. And so when they come in, they're like, oh, wow, y'all rearranged, or that's new. Oh, it feels so good in here. The vibe is great. Like, that's just going to continue. Like, I do see this as a lifelong venture. And hopefully by the time I'm 50 or 60, we've really built something even more special than it is today. And people can, again, have that option to create something world-class here in our state.
That's great.
I definitely, I got to film up there soon. And when I do, I'd like to just come tour it and just, check it out.
Yeah, man.
Get inspired.
Absolutely.
We're setting this place up, and over time it'll get more set up, but it's definitely it's a journey. It's not something you can just do overnight, so I'm excited.
That's right.
I definitely, like I said, your website, I saw it inspired me, and then we got a hold of the studio, and we're slowly building it to where we do videography, photography, all that kind of stuff here too. But we are doing podcasting right now, and I do want to talk to you about podcasting because I know you offer podcasting services. Do you have a podcast?
So, yes, about, 6 or 7 years ago, I began seeing, so the studio was up and rolling. I was full-time. We had our first child, and my wife wanted to stay home, and I was like, man, this is going to be pretty scary to do music, because music, we might have a great month where we can eat steak a couple nights a week or something like that. And then the next month, we ain't going to eat steak. We're going to eat Spam or something like that every night. So it was like, it's so up and down. And I was like, man, I really would love some recurring revenue. And podcasts meant a ton to me because I did not study business, but podcasting gave me access to all these business leaders. And so about 6 years ago, I started seeing sort of what happened in the early 2000s with social media. these big companies would look and say, hey, our customers are on social media. We should be on social media. And the same thing started happening. These businesses said, hey, our customers are listening to podcasts. Like, we should have a podcast. And so we rolled out. So watch it. Wait for this super creative name. Blue Sky Podcasting, right? Blue Sky Studios, Blue Sky Podcasting.
Nice.
I'm apparently terrible at naming things. So a whole different website, branding, social media content. And we have about 30 companies across the country that we work with their podcasts. So some of them, they'll send us the files and we'll edit, do their transcript, sound bites for social, that sort of thing. And then some of them we help produce. But man, that has been a really fun venture. And one of the things I hate when guests ramble because I'm going to answer your question.
No, we want you to ramble. Ramble on, as the song goes.
But one of the things I really love, and I found this out maybe year 3 or 4 when I had the studio, is when you do something so creative, a big creative output like recording a record 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week on end, like it gets pretty brutal. It gets to the point where you're not really enjoying it. But what I found is if I could go do something else that was sort of a different creative muscle, helping somebody figure out how to craft their podcast or market it, something like that, like it was still creative. It still was work. It still it helped pay the bills, but it was sort of flexing a different muscle. I could come back to music and say, oh, I feel refreshed. I don't feel drained. And so it sort of allowed me to have different things as I'm working. That helps a ton.
It also gives your ears a chance to rest too when you're in that studio environment.
Yeah.
It's like, people don't realize that too. You have to take a break. You have to let your ears rest. You have to just, like you said, focus on something else or whatever. Just go outside and go to McDonald's and get a burger or whatever the case may be, But
That's right,
I can see the podcasts are a different animal. We've had a great time doing these, and it was Jesse's idea and brought me in with it. But I just think it's the now, it's the future. Podcasts are, whether you're interested in music, movies, technical stuff, whatever. There's a podcast like YouTube. There's a channel for everybody.
And what's crazy about podcasting, like, if you listen to the radio today, every commercial is about listen to this podcast, listen to this podcast. Yeah, Alec Baldwin shot somebody. Now he has a podcast. Like,
about shooting her?
No. What I'm just saying is like everybody's going that route to the point of like everybody caught on at once and I'm hearing it everywhere. Like I'm just driving down the road. It's like this person has a podcast. So, and the thing about this podcast was I grew up hearing all the stories that my dad told me. My dad was a musician and I've heard it from him, but these guys are still around. They've never had a platform. So we've created this platform and we're getting a nice little surge of people interested in what we're doing. And so I'm really excited to see where it goes. But we also, it's not just musicians, it's bookers, it's,
studio
producers.
Right.
We want to talk about everything.
All aspects.
Because it is way more than just picking up a guitar and playing,
Well, and we're not just doing although albeit a integral part of it, the history of the music on the coast or the state or what pertains to us, but also the present and when we're going to ask you, or maybe we're asking you now, where do you think it's headed, or your vision of where the music can, should, might go, that type of thing, because we want it to be not just looking back. Oh, here comes that old geezer and the young guy, talking about all the same old stuff. But no, we want it to be different. We want it to what's relative. So, where do you see music at, and where do you see it? I know it's a very broad question. Where do you see it going, or do you?
Yeah, that is a big question. I was trying to write a post on our website a couple months ago about this, and I never finished it. So that might be how my answer goes too. It might not be a complete thought, but I do feel like there's a really neat model in what Mississippi could be looking at somewhere like Texas. You can be a successful 6-figure artist and never leave the state of Texas. You go to a venue there and they love their Texas musicians. They love their people who write songs about what's going on there, and they support them. Not only do they support them by encouraging them with their words, but they support them financially by buying their merch, buying a ticket, wanting to hear original music. And I feel like that's one of the things I would, now this is not where I see things going. This is what I would love to see is a rise in the value of Mississippians longing to hear Mississippi original music. Because that's
I like
not.
that. I like that a lot. One of the things that could endear, and which coincides with something I'm doing, is Mississippi musicians, just like you referred to the Texas musicians, writing about Mississippi, they write about Texas. It's, whether you're talking about Lukenbach or you're talking about Austin or whatever. It's that. Which also brings the masses into the fold. It's like, oh, there's a reason to be proud of this person, whether it be their talent, which of course, first and foremost, or the reflection of their pride of Mississippi or their pride of their state, or proud to be a Mississippian, proud of where I came from. It's like a marriage. It's, there's ups and downs, there's good and bad, but it's ours. It's who we are, at least this generation and future generations at this point. But I think that would tie into it. And I like that idea. And I would like to have the same vision, hopefully, if that comes to be. Comes to fruition,
I like
but
that.
You're in Jackson, you start writing about the state parks or something. Somebody up there's going to say, yes, I love that place, or I love that. I like the way this guy's doing that. It's a start. It's the beginning. And of course we have a lot of really good musicians, names, as well as as I like to refer to them, guys in the trenches or women in the trenches.
That's right.
We're the working guys.
And typically when I do see people leave the state, and I don't mean this in a bad way or slight to them, for greener pastures, it's typically because they just don't feel that capacity there to stay in the state
or
and
opportunity.
tour. And that's right, yeah. So I think that's the big thing. It just starts with the normal people who enjoy music paying attention to your Mississippi artist.
That'd be a good slogan, a good thing to say. Think about your Mississippi musicians. Support your Mississippi musicians in all context of it. Studios, working, whatever.
Oh yeah. Any big bands, I'm gonna be pushing them. I'll be telling them to go to Jackson, man. That's where the sound's at. When it comes to like recording good quality band music. And I mean, like you said, singer songwriter. I'm trying to do something like that here. It'll take a while, but mainly right now I want to focus on a creative space for photographers and videographers. And I'll tell you, when you come down to the coast, let me know. I would love for you to put your eyes on this and give me some pointers.
Yeah, absolutely, Jesse. And one of the reasons I reached out to you in the first place, man, I just wanted to encourage you guys, keep it up. There's such a great vibe down on the coast, and having things like what you are doing, it can be the start of something really neat. So please keep up the good work. Who knows, maybe I'll be down there with you guys.
Shoot, yeah. Bring it on, Sonny Jim.
Well, do you have anything else before we adjourn? Do you want to, we always ask this question,
Yeah, Jesse's real good at editing, by the way, so he can, he makes us look good.
Well, this is going to be different because this guy, he's got the mic.
I know.
He's got the mic, right. And I know this guy can edit, so I got to make this sound guy.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. No, but I want to ask you if you have any advice for up and coming producers, musicians. You've been there and done that with a lot of different people. In different genres come to your studio. Any words of encouragement, any advice that you might have for them?
At the risk of sounding like repeating the Nike slogan of just do it, I think that would probably be my biggest advice. And it was honestly a big hurdle for me when I first started. I wanted to wait for the perfect setting, the perfect time to write.
There's no
the
such
perfect
thing.
time to, and there's no such thing. It just doesn't happen. So if you want to be a producer, don't send me an email about it. Like, freaking produce. Like, go find somebody, produce them. If you want to write, be the best writer you can. Write songs. Like, sit down and write. Like, if you want to be a performer, get out there and perform. Like, those things, the people that you admire, the people that you see that are doing that craft every day, it's because they spent the time, they put in the work, and they did it, and they developed those skills. Of course, there's natural talent, but at some point, you've got to put in the time.
Well, you can simulate it all you want, and you can say you can be in your room with or your house with a couple of friends over, and that's the beginning or part of it. But there's nothing that can replace getting up there the first time in a club or at a church or wherever, and they're looking at you, and you have to, okay,
right.
what do you got, buddy? Bring it on. That you've got that thing. Nothing, as we all know, replaces that. So, in what you're saying, just do it. Just do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You don't do it again, or you find out that's not what you like, or you find out, man, I love this. I could do this. I can go from here. So yeah, good advice.
I want you to pitch your contact information.
Sure. You can find the recording studio at blueskystudios.org, and you can find more about our podcasting service at blueskypodcasting.com.
And when I get backed up, I'm definitely going to be sending you some podcasting to edit, because boy, it's getting busy. And I'm just like, wow. So we'll definitely be in touch. But Casey, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you took time for yourself. And this is our first remote podcast, so hopefully we did well. I have it rigged up here, but like I said, you gotta fail forward sometimes.
Oh, yeah. No, that's great. I meant to ask you, were you performing? Did you start as a performer? How did you just get into the whole thing? I mean, were you a working musician, or did you... I don't know.
I think it was 6th or 7th grade. My dad had always played, and about 6th or 7th grade, I grabbed my dad's guitar, and for some reason, some girls were around, and I was like, "Oh, girls like it when you play guitar," and so that was sort of the catalyst.
Yeah, buddy.
And then, at First Baptist Van Cleve, my youth minister John Jones, he saw me playing for all the wrong reasons, and he was like, "Hey, man, why don't you play a song for the right reasons?" And he didn't say it that way. He wasn't. He certainly didn't say it that way. But he had me lead worship. So I think one Wednesday night, just at maybe 8th or 9th grade, me and some buddies led. I had a band called another great name, Soul Amp was our name for our band. And
because you only had one amp.
What's that?
Soul Amp.
Soul Amp, man.
Because you only had one amp. The sauce. Play on words.
That's right. Only it was singular. That's right. So,
right.
So yeah, man. That was how we got started. Just playing some worship music, and people were kind enough to let us play some originals around the coast and that sort of thing.
Was your wife into music? Did y'all meet through music, or was that just something totally different?
No, she was a teacher, and then did her master's in dyslexia therapy. But now she stays home with the kiddos.
Are you kidding me?
I don't think he is.
No.
So my wife, she's at a school right behind us called Lighthouse Academy for Dyslexia. She's a dyslexia therapist as well. That's crazy.
That's awesome, Jess. Yeah.
They're trying to build awareness in the state of Mississippi, and that's my video project that I've been doing. That's why I have to go to Jackson for this education bill that's going through. But anyway,
that's great.
That's really cool. I don't really get to meet a lot of other husbands of dyslexia therapists. I know it's a sacrifice with what these teachers go through and how they're changing the face of education as we know it.
It's great. Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. My wife's a Harley Davidson mechanic. No,
is that real, Hank?
No, she's not.
No, his wife is awesome. She is awesome.
She works for a judge. So I have that going for me.
Hey, you got connections.
There you go.
That's right. If that emergency ever happens.
You never know, man.
I just killed it by saying that out loud.
I'm Casey Combest.
And I'm Hank Berman.
And I'm Jesse Hill. Until next time, folks, thank you for joining us on the High Note Podcast.